if you see the presentation? Is it okay? The lady? Okay. And I know for a fact that there's going to be some things that you can't read because they're just in lighter colored fonts. I'm very happy to make this available to Susan and distribute it later. Okay. So the description of today's seminar is I'm going to be going through some things very quickly. There's a lot of material here. We're going to, hopefully, you'll walk out the door having learned a little bit about Iowa's solar viability, solar energy basics, how a solar cell works, how PV technology systems, types, and applications differ. And in the back of your mind, be thinking about your facilities, your church facilities, or even your homes, and how what you learned today is applicable to your particular site or situation. We'll talk about racking and mounting design considerations depending on the pitch and scale of your roof. We'll talk about solar site assessment basics. So if you bring in a consultant, do your own due diligence. Is this person doing what they're supposed to be doing? And it also gives you an idea of what to expect when a solar site assessor comes to perform their tasks. And then we'll talk about some just basics for sizing and costing a PV system and the step-by-step process for implementing a solar electric project. And then the last part of the presentation is, we'll kind of dive into some of the numbers. So the objectives are that property owners need to comprehend solar PV technology and investment options in order to make educated decisions. I mean, it's that way about, even if you go buy a pair of tennis shoes, you need to know, is this the right thing for me? Or a car, so it makes sense that we would want you to know what you're facing when you make these decisions and that they're educated decisions that you're making. The objective of this course is for participants to be able to learn also what their solar investment will look like in Iowa. It's different depending on where you live, especially here in the United States. We'll talk, I have one slide about biblical verses. We won't need to go over that slide. We'll talk about solar and how it's Iowa's newest farming industry. We'll talk a little bit about, as I mentioned, the solar PV basics, solar site assessments. This is the agenda of my presentation. And we'll end up with talking about incentives, insurance, and utility relations towards the end. It's a very big picture. You can't just install solar anymore. So like I said, we're going to skip over that because you did a wonderful job. So what does this mean, Iowa? Solar is Iowa's newest farming industry. Personally, what it means to me is that, we have an entire economy based on the sun here in Iowa. And it's, you can just drive down Interstate 80. On the left-hand side is corn, on the right-hand side is beans. And this entire economy is based on the reliability and power of the sun. People will say, we don't get this much sun in Iowa. Yes, we do. And people live, their livelihood depends on it. So why are we not harnessing this solar power and saving ourselves some money and also benefiting the environment, saving our state? This is a picture of how solar actually works in Iowa. Access energy. Has anybody from the Mount Pleasant area? Yep. So Access Energy, the cooperative there, has made this very significant investment in solar energy, and they power their own facilities. We just did a presentation with our solar popcorn popper and the Solar Traveler there for their annual 75th centennial celebration, and it was just a hoot. It was quite a success. So they are very supportive of renewable energy, and I think you'll find, depending on where you live, and if you ask the right questions and you build those relationships with the utilities, you'll find out that they are also making these investments into some exploration and renewable energy themselves, even though the majority of the energy that they're sending across the grid to you is not renewable. This is a picture of the United States solar market. And the color gradients obviously kind of, but is a key, lead you to understand solar viability in the United States. Obviously, it's nothing new. The Southwest and the West Coast of the United States is well known for its advancement in renewable energy technologies and installation, job creation, all surrounding this entire economy. We know Iowa is number 1.5, one in the nation for wind production. But when you actually look at a map of the United States and look at the solar potential, just solar, we see that, Iowa's not too bad for solar either. Especially if I tell you that New Jersey has more solar installed than Iowa, and Iowa has better solar viability. So if they can do it, why aren't we? And I won't go into all of the discussion about legislation and supported policy, but that's what's working in Colorado as well, and it's working in New Jersey, is that they have the type of solar political policy in place that supports the industry there. And we need it here in Iowa, because solar works in Iowa. These are just some statistics that just go on to further the discussion that solar is on the rise, the market's on the rise, job creation is, we all benefit from the jobs that can be created, the clean energy jobs that can be created in solar in the United States. And this is also just another example of, well, here's Iowa, ranking 14, and there's Germany up at the top, whose solar potential they recognized, and also job creation they recognized in the last 5 years, and their growth is exponential. And I mean, one of the more recent headlines was that Germany has powered the majority, over 30% of their business day energy consumption through solar power, putting people back to work and saving their environment. So if we had a map of the world, you would see again that Germany's solar potential is nowhere near ours. So again, an example where we have to get people to come together and make the decisions and fight for the policy. Do I have people in the room who understand how solar technology works? Okay, it helps me give me an idea how much in depth I need to get. We have a couple of installers. If you would please just stand up really quickly and announce yourselves. Installers in the room today are Greenlight Energy.
Yep, and I'm Michael Gutchison, also with Greenlight Energy.
And they are exhibiting out in front. And RJ of RJ Construction.
I'm an installer. We're in eastern Iowa, Cedar Rapids area. We're the ones that we put the solar travel together, and it's a nice tool for demonstrating.
So after the discussion today, you're welcome, and we encourage you to go and speak to the installers, especially if they're close to your area, and ask more questions. So just some basics here. Solar is the Latin word for sun. Multiple technologies convert sunlight to usable energy for buildings, and it can be used to diversify energy sources, improve energy efficiency, and save money. Okay, I have a breakaway out of the story. So I don't have air conditioning in my home right now. There's an air conditioning unit, central air unit, but it's not working right now. Fancy that, but 1 week we have the most devastating heat. But, it's not really been hot all summer, and I really only needed a couple of days of the summer. I would have enjoyed having it last night. So I got home from work, and I do what I normally do, just go for a run on the Sac and Fox Trail. Those of you from Eastern Iowa know it. And I got back to my house. Gosh, it's really hot. I'm having trouble cooling down here. So I unplugged the fan and took it with me everywhere I went last night. I had it in the kitchen. I had it near my desk. I took it upstairs when I went to bed. And I woke up. I slept horribly. I woke up like 5 times, just drenched in sweat last night. I'm like, gosh, this is the worst night. I should have slept in the basement. So I'm getting ready. I'm like, I'll take the fan. I'm taking it to the bathroom with me. This fan with me everywhere I go. And when I unplugged it from the wall, I realized I had it facing the wall. I could say #idiot. No wonder, didn't I think to get up? And it's like, there's no air. Talk about waste of The wall was cool. So, energy efficiency, you know, use it wisely. It's not here forever. You don't have these resources. They're not just, you know, indefinite. So use it wisely. It will save you money. And then after energy efficiency, start thinking about how to do or generate energy on site. To generate the electricity that the United States consumes, this is an interesting fact. Great for a cocktail party if you go to one. So here's what you can tell them. The U.S. energy consumers would need to install PV systems on 7% of the total land area, surface area currently occupied by cities and homes. 7%! And we would meet our electricity demand. If this roof had solar panels on it, if the parking lot had solar panels covering it, if your churches did, if the schools, this is all existing. We don't have to tear up a single acre of land to do this. That's the takeaway. Solar cells, also called photovoltaics, convert sunlight directly into electricity. And we'll show you how. When you go outside, you can have a bag of popcorn. We have brought literally a popcorn machine which plugs into our solar traveler, and it is proof right there in front of you that the solar sunlight is hitting the solar panels. It's converting that creating electricity, converting it from DC energy to AC energy. We have an AC appliance, which is the popcorn popper. Who doesn't have a popcorn popper in their home? I mean, we could be making waffles out there, okay? You plug that in, and then you have what you need. And we're trying to show and demonstrate that this can be done. And have some popcorn later, it's really good. This PV effect was discovered in 1954, so this is nothing new. This is not rocket science. The trouble is that it's been kind of expensive to do this for a very, very long time. Well, now, today, it's not as expensive as it was even last year. I gave a talk like this a year ago, and already the prices have come down. Already the prices have come down. So critics will say, the sun is not available 24 hours a day. And then they'll also say that solar panels are not aesthetically pleasing. So we don't want it on our roof, we don't want it in our, on the apartment complex, we don't want it, period. And then they'll say it's too expensive. So here's your response. That the sun is variable. We know that, right? The sun comes up and then it goes down. But because it's variable, doesn't mean that it's not reliable. Farmers wouldn't farm if the sun was not reliable, right? It's variable, but it's not unreliable. I'm going to leave the science to a later discussion, but just know that there are some very specific definitions and terms when you're talking about solar energy and understanding how to size a system and to understand your particular site and location and making decisions about the tilt and the angle and the type of system that you choose to install. So I'm going to save some of these definitions, and like I said, if you want the presentation, I'm very happy to make it available. This is a diagram from Google. We've all seen this diagram since we were in elementary school, right? So the Earth, this is the relationship between sun and the Earth. And well, if we know that PV effect was discovered in 1954, and we've been looking at this diagram for a lot more years than that, there's a very important relationship between the sun and the Earth, and we need to harness it. It's essentially the takeaway here. There's some technical descriptions about this relationship, but I think the most important thing for you to understand is that the Earth, it's tilted away from the sun during winter, and Earth is hit by a low-angled sunlight. It passes through atmosphere, essentially, and the days are shorter. We know this in winter, the days are shorter, but it's because of this relationship between the sun and Earth. And then in the summertime, the days are longer. Panel basics. Solar panels are comprised of solar cells, And then an array, solar array or PV, photovoltaic array, are comprised of multiple solar panels. And these solar cells are combined to make one solar panel, and your solar panels are combined and connected together to create your array. What we have outside demonstrating is 1 kilowatt array. That's 4 solar panels that are connected together to produce 1 kilowatt of solar energy. Panels are mounted at a fixed angle facing south, or can also be west, as well as east, depending on your location, or can also have a tracking device that follows the sun. So it can be fixed, like Mark was for his presentation, or it can be like me, and it follows the sun, you know, winter, summer, follows the sun. And those are a little more expensive, those systems, those dual axis tracking systems, but they do harness more of the sun's energy. The decision there is it worth the extra investment cost. So, different system options, depending on your particular situation and site and what your goals are. You might choose to have a solar electric system that is grid connected, in which case, just a few things about grid connection. It is the most popular system type on the market today. It's connected directly to the grid, which is a vast network of wires spanning the nation. We all know the grid. Sometimes referred to as battery-less grid connected or utility-tied systems. Essentially, what you have is your solar array, which is the wires are connected through conduit to a combiner box, which combines all of the wires from the various runs of your solar array. And then we have what's called your inverter, which is what converts your DC energy, which is what is the electricity that the sun that the solar panels generate, converts the DC energy to AC energy. And then what you have is the rest of your balance of systems, and you have your utility meter. So your utility meter is monitoring how much electricity you are generating, and then from there it goes across the grid. So you don't necessarily, this is a grid connected system. This is probably one of the systems, because it's so popular, is that you don't really have to think about it. Whereas, as we get into a couple of the other alternatives, there's a little more maintenance and operation. But in this case, this is the most simple system. The local electrical distribution system accepts the surplus electricity. And when not generating, the local electrical distribution system feeds electricity to the building. So you can send across the grid, but when you're not producing, you can draw from the grid. How does it work? As I just described, your PV array produces the DC direct current electricity. Electricity flows through wires, which are attached to the inverter, and the inverter converts the DC electricity to grid-compatible AC electricity. So this diagram shows your washer, dryer, your televisions that you're lighting. This is all appliances and equipment in your home that requires AC energy. Whatever your home isn't using, it produces, it sends back across the grid. What about metering? An electric utility monitors the contribution of small producers to the grid and the electricity the utility supplies to the home or business when PV is not producing. Pretty straightforward. Such as, well, winter times we would not be producing. When there's not enough sun, when the sun's not shining, or when there's not enough production, or production doesn't meet your demand. There's this little thing called a disconnect. Now, some people think of disconnect as like a bad thing, right? You open up your mail and you get a letter of disconnect. That's pretty scary. But in this case, a solar disconnect is absolutely essential. It is required by code in the event of an emergency. All code compliance systems have what's called this emergency solar disconnect. and you have to have a sticker that looks exactly like this on your system. I'm telling you this because these are things that you should know and be watching for. These are manually operated switches that enable service personnel to switch the system off, disconnect, therefore, to prevent electrical shock. So, should we grid connect? Pros are, it's simpler than other systems. It's less expensive. There's an unlimited supply of electricity because remember, as we said, you're producing, but if you're not producing what you demand, you can draw from the grid as a backup. They're more efficient than battery-based systems, unlimited storage of surplus electricity, and they're greener than battery-based systems. The cons are you're vulnerable to grid failure unless a backup generator or an uninterruptible service power supply is available. In terms of metering and billing, when you're grid connected, your metering type is going to be bi-directional. The dual dial type meters, there's one to track electricity delivered to the grid and one to track electricity supplied by the grid. In most cases, meters are what's called the bi-directional now, but that is an option depending on your utility provider. There's also digital net meters which track both supply and demand. These are more of the newer installations. And depending on your utility, you'll make arrangements for your billing that will either be annual net metering or net billing, depending on your utility. In net metering situation, this incentivizes the customer to feed your surplus back onto the grid. And there's monthly kilowatt hour tracking on behalf of your utility provider, and then basically at the end of the year you reconcile, you true up essentially. In the net billing situation, your utility charges your customer the retail rates for the electricity supplied, and then they also have what's that called, their avoided cost rates or wholesale prices for what you produce. And in most cases, this is seen as less desirable because you're getting, 0.03 cents per kilowatt hour produced. That's that avoided cost rate, and then they're charging you 10 cents. So it doesn't seem like it's a good balance, but in most cases, utility companies do the net metering. So this slide here does the math and shows you the net benefit between the different billing, the net metering and net billing. And essentially, as I said, you get a better deal than net metering. Now, the alternative system is called grid connected with battery backup, and everything is the same with as the grid connected system, except you have invested in a battery bank. So additional energy that you're producing that you're not using. Let's say during the day you're not home, things are powered down. You can be sending power and recharging your batteries so that at night when the sun is not shining, there is this base demand into your house. Whatever, if you have central air that works, let's say. Anyway, while you're sleeping, you're drawing from that battery bank to power the base demand. There's a lot of text here, but essentially what it says here is that for people who are making this investment in a situation that you, let's say, maybe are located more remotely, maybe it's a new construction, and you balance the investment in trenching in the electrical versus making this investment in being completely off grid, and you look at this investment over time, so you get a true return on your investment. It could be, you're going to have this location for the next 25, 30 years. I mean, really, from a congregation standpoint, how long has your church been standing there? And how many more years will it be there? This is a good investment. In the case of a battery backup system, if it's a new construction and the cost to trench is way beyond or well beyond the cost to invest in the batteries, it might be a good idea. Pros: it provides a reliable source of electricity, provides emergency power during utility shortage and outage. And by the way, when you are sizing that battery bank, you want to think about, well, what is our critical load? So which parts of the home or which parts of the church facility can, in terms of the electrical demand, can we do without? And which parts do we want to make sure that in the event of emergency, that's that critical load, we want to make sure that there's constant supply of energy. Maybe there's a small data center, you don't want the threat or risk of failure or loss. Maybe you have a large kitchen because part of your church functions is to feed a lot of people and there's a lot of food in there. You have to think about these things. The critical load is really where it becomes important when you're sizing your battery banking system. The cons are it's more costly than batteryless grid connected systems, less efficient than batteryless grid connected systems. I would say that's probably a little bit more in terms of operations and maintenance. There's a lot of taking care of batteries. As we know at our training center, which is at Prairie Woods Franciscan Spirituality Center, which I invite you all to come and see. Another beautiful, beautiful natural space like we are in today that has made significant investments in renewable energy and power, over 50% of their facilities, which are extensive, with solar power. Less environmentally friendly than batteryless grid connected systems. The question is, what do we do with these batteries when their life is over? It requires more maintenance than batteryless grid connected systems. As I said, our training center is at Prairie Woods. It is off-grid, and we have to make sure constantly go out and check the batteries and it's just battery health. So your standalone systems, completely off-grid standalone systems is the other system alternative where that and your hybrid system is where you've looked at the overall picture and potential to harness natural renewable energy, and you have made an investment in both renewable energy and battery, and perhaps even multiple forms of renewable energy. So in this picture, what we're seeing is solar power and wind. So this is sort of that perfect marriage where the sun is, stronger during the day. It's not shining at night. It's windier at night than it is during the day, typically. So it's a perfect marriage to harness both of those forms of renewable energy. And then again, if you have critical load that you don't want to lose during a power outage, or if you have just a need to make sure that you're okay in the event that it's not windy and the sun's not shining, the battery bank is a good investment. It's a wonderful hybrid system. It is costly. So how do we choose a PV system that's right for our site? There's 3 basic systems to choose from, which we've covered: grid connected PV, and off-grid hybrid. But be sure to inquire early with your utility about interconnection fees. I always say this, number one, because you never know who's in the room, you know what I mean? But it is true. Things just go better. When you're talking about utilities and renewable energy, it just goes better. Even if you're thinking about it, let them know. And they have resources, and they have people on staff that can help you, not only just making the decisions, but putting you in touch with the right qualified people, and help you out with the paperwork to make sure that you're crossing T's and dotting I's. Even if you're thinking about it, call them. So just quickly, distributed residential is one application of solar. Unfortunately, we don't see enough of it. I drive everywhere thinking, there needs to be solar there. There needs to be, I see solar panels where there are no solar. But this is one system application. Same thing with commercial. I have a dream for there to be the Iowa's first solar corridor from Iowa City to Cedar Rapids, and every single commercial building that's out there. I have a dream for them to have solar on their rooftop. I think that would be just so cool to have a solar corridor. So that people, I don't know what the traffic is on 380, but it is crazy. And sometimes I'm afraid I'm not going to make it home on 380. I think that would just, people will be like, wow, solar, wow. And it'd be commercial. So commercial is predominantly flat roof. So super easy, quick installation. And the majority of our commercial roofs are now going with a white EPDM, so even better for harnessing solar energy because it's naturally reflective of the sun, and you have the solar panels right there, and it's cooler. So when you have the solar panels right there on the flat roof, which is white and reflective, you're harnessing even more. It's even more efficient. And then there's utility scale solar. We have a couple solar fields in Iowa. Hopefully we'll see more. But this is an option for a ground mount system where taking up acres or half acre of solar, you can produce quite a bit of energy in that type of space. And it's like its own utility. So we're just going to talk a little bit about design considerations. So I just invite all of you to be thinking about whatever facility it is that you've come today you're representing, be thinking about, yeah, this doesn't apply to us, or yes, this does apply, because then you'll be sure to take that away with you and take it back to your community. So racking and mounting can often be the most complicated portion of solar PV system installation. It's actually the most expensive part of it because there's a lot of labor involved. But once the racking and mounting is in place, the panel installation goes very quickly. It's plug and play, and then cycle the power. Well, you have to do all the paperwork too. But it's one of the greatest time-consuming parts of the installation. But it is the foundation of your system. So it protects the modules, it protects the roof, and it protects people. So therefore it's very important. Racking and mounting system constitute roughly 10 to 25% of the cost of your total system. I'll say this right now, just across the board, roof mount system is less expensive, nearly 50% less expensive than a ground mount system. But there are lots of good reasons to do a ground mount system, because if you have to replace your entire roof to add the correct structural integrity just to, support your rooftop installation, it might be better just to do the ground mount system if the roof is just fine, and say you just replaced, the shingles or the metal roofing a year ago. So lots to consider. Racking and mounting various ways to install a PV array depends on the site-specific building elements, including your building orientation, if your building is flat or if it's pitched, whether a ground mount, pole mount is better for the reasons I've already discussed. And in some cases, this is building integrated PV, BIPV, a solar wall, as we see in this picture, depending on how your existing facility or your new facility that you're building is already in design, you might want to add a solar wall. So that wall is actually is your on-site power plant. This is an example of a flat roof mounted system. There are lots of things to consider when you're going to do a roof mounted system on a flat roof. If it's commercial, you need to make sure that your design team is looking at the valleys and ridges for drainage, the vents, the exhaust fans, rooftop units, curbs, parapets, all of these things you can design around them. But you have to design around them, and you have to be thinking about them. Leaving pathways for operations and maintenance to get to parts of your system. Mounting techniques include attached, which require roof penetration, meaning holes in the roof. Now some people, that's it, we're done, conversation over, we're doing a ground mount system. But there are very, very skilled installers, and it's not the fear that it used to be. But it is, if you are absolutely opposed to having any penetrations into your roof, then you can go with a ballasted system, which is what relies on the system weight and concrete pavers to hold it in place. And I have a picture of that coming up. And then there's also a hybrid mounting technique which minimizes the roof penetrations. There are still some, but then there are others that balance with some leveling of ballasting. And all of these are driven by design considerations. What's your project goal? What's the minimum number of kilowatt hours that you're looking at? Well, we just want to do a 10% offset of our current energy consumption. Great. And then you have that, I want 75, 80%, we're going to maximize the rebates, and this is an annuity, we're thinking about this for, this building is going to be for the next 25 years, and we're going to make the investment now. So what's your goal? Do you have aesthetic issues? Is there somebody on the board that says, solar panels are just ugly. I don't want anybody to see them, so we're putting them on the roof because I don't want people to pull up to our parking lot and see solar panels. It's an issue. Structural limitations. On an existing building, can the existing roof handle the additional load? What's code say? Does code allow roof type, condition, tilt angle requirements, maintenance, and site challenges? These are all things to be considering. With the rack-mounted system, the pros is versatility. It's designed to allow for a variety of tilt angles and directions. Another pro is it's very simple to install. It allows aeration, it allows air to circulate around the array, which is very important for improving efficiency of the production of the system. And verticality can be positioned above obstructions for shading, like above rooftop units to gain about 10% efficiency in your rooftop unit performance. I don't know why more people don't do this. Really. The cons are subject to harsh winds, and we have some pretty harsh winds here in Iowa. Roof penetrations, as we talked about that. Difficult to access, steep roofs. You have to make sure that all OSHA guidelines are being met, so that people can get to the roof to perform O&M. And the limitations to sun exposure if the building orientation is already fixed. So, let's just say in this case, I didn't look at the roof, this part of the building, but my guess is that there's quite a bit of shading because of the existing trees. So this might not be the best location for a PV array, this particular side of the roof, but there probably is another part of the roof that is better. Whole ground mount systems, these are attached to sturdy steel, anchored securely in the ground. And these pictures, pretty much say exactly what a ground mount array is. You can seasonally adjust the angle or tilt angle to accommodate changes in the elevation of the sun. So, like I said, you can tilt them this way or tilt them this way. And then if they're dual axis tracking, then they're also, doing this as the sun goes over and summertime, wintertime, it moves around. It's great. Oh, I was just going to say this one last thing. It increases the output by approximately 10 to 40%. This is with the tracking, and it also sheds snow easier. And quite honestly, if you're afraid of heights, it's a great option to sometimes the snow does accumulate on the solar panels, so you can take a nice light mop broom and just kind of assist the snow to fall off. Whereas on the roof, it might be a little more difficult. Pros, well, we talked about the pros, can be positioned precisely, maintains cooler array temperatures. Again, air can circulate around them, and it's safer to install, easier to access. The cons are it's not suitable for small lots. I can't imagine a ground mount in my backyard, for instance. And also it's accessible or vulnerability to weather and vandals. Although I don't think I've ever heard a single story about, RJ, have you, about a vandalism to solar panels? I think they just kind of scare people. We talked a little bit about the vertical solar wall. First of all, I think they're beautiful. If we can integrate solar energy power plants into our exterior facades or shading devices, we're like getting so many multiple benefits out of it. So if you're at the design table right now, think about it. So the analysis of 3 key factors when your site speed test is, how much electricity is required, how much electrical demand can a PV system satisfy, and how much will it cost to meet the demand with solar electricity. In existing buildings, essentially, what you need to be considering is look at least 2 to 3 years of your electrical utility bills. If you don't have them on record, you just call your utility company. Because I said, remember, you're going to start this relationship early. You're going to call them and say, I'm considering this. I would like to look at the last 2 or 3 years of my electric bill. And then with somebody who's experienced in this, you can start to evaluate what the trends are, where your spikes are, and look at what makes sense for you to install as to meet that base demand. Essentially, just so you know that when you're planning to install an off-grid system, you're going to be sizing that based on monthly averages over time. When you're planning to install a grid-tied system, you're going to size your system based on your total annual consumption. There's a difference there. This is, an example of how you assess or size up your demand. And if you're kind of geeky like me, you want to go around and look at all the different, figure out what your load is. Essentially create a load profile. Well, we have all these lights here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and what's the wattage on it? That's essentially what is involved when you're doing a load profile. A lot of new buildings that go, you mentioned LEED earlier, a lot of new buildings that go for a LEED. You can't get around it. You have to do energy simulation, which involves a modeling of your building, and your engineer is going to input those loads. And then you'll have a nice summary output of everything. And then you can create a beautiful pie chart. And you're like, wow, my kitchen appliances are this many percent of my overall electric budget. But this is what essentially you can do on your own. When that site assessor comes to your facility, they're going to bring with them what's called the Solar Pathfinder. They might also bring the Wiley Acme ASSE, which is not a Roadrunner product. Or they're going to bring the Soul Metrics. And essentially these are tools that measure sunlight and look at potential for shading around your site. And they can walk around like I like to do, okay, well for here, we're going to have lots of shading issues, but gosh, look at this. If we just go over here, we still have enough sunlight. That tree off to the, west is not going to be in the picture. Maybe a little bit in the late parts of the summer, but for the rest of the year, it's going to be fine. Essentially, that's what these tools do. And one's digital and one is manual, if you will. It's literally a piece of paper, that black sheet, that piece of paper, which gets slid into this little dome, so it doesn't even weigh. This microphone weighs more than it. And the white chalk line that is kind of dancing around there is somebody has measured the tree shading potential and also the solar potential. Okay, I know I'm going to have to slip through a few things, so move through this quickly so I stay within my time frame and get to the nuts and bolts of this, is how much it's going to cost me. Okay, I have to do this quickly and then we'll get to the costs. Things that you need to know are part of your system investment. These are the equipment, pictures, images of the equipment. Solar panels. Expect to see solar panels if you're investing in a solar array. This is what they look like. This gets tucked under after everything's connected and they cycle, cycle the power. But this is what it will look like when they're connected. This is what a ballasted system looks like, as opposed to the one where I was telling you about how they actually do the roof penetrations into your roof. This is a ballasted system where there's no penetrations into your roof, and this will work, but you have to have the right site conditions. Another picture of a ballasted system with no roof penetrations. Cooper Beeline, this is a ground mount solar racking system. This is what it looks like before they attach the solar panels up there. It's just a giant framework. This is what they look like once they are attached. Flat jack, this is a rack mounted system, as you can see down here on the roof. This is your inverter. Now, some people have never seen what an inverter looks like and they think, oh, I don't know if I want this additional equipment in my home. Well, you know what? It's really just another piece of equipment that's working in your favor. And they're all, it's not like somebody just tinkered it together in a small garage somewhere. It has to go, it's UL listed, certified, it's tested for standard testing conditions, and it's on the market. They've been on the market. They're getting more and more efficient. It's just, think of it as just another, something that can be on the exterior or interior of your home, your choosing, but they're completely safe and they're to be expected with a solar PV installation. This is hardware. Expect to be, there's going to be quite a bit of hardware when they do the installation. Sunny Boy, this is cool. This thing is it kind of like works in your favor to track your own production and then creates, you can access a website at SMA Sunny Boy and look at real-time production on a computer screen. So you can send it to all your friends, ha, look how much energy I'm producing. I think the next, yep, this is what a large battery bank is going to look like. Those are batteries. This is your main panels, and this is your meter. This is the web box. This is another version of what works to remote monitoring maintenance of your. This is on the back of your solar panels. It's mounted for remote monitoring. Okay, project implementation. We've talked a little bit about what should we expect. This is the project flow. You're going to assess your solar resource. Then you're going to size and design your system. Then you're going to check association regulations, file necessary paperwork for permission to install if required. You will apply for a special incentive. Your utility company is going to have incentives. Some may not. There's also state and federal tax incentives, which we'll get into. And you want to talk with your insurance company to find out how this is going to affect, or if it does or doesn't affect the cost of your insurance. You will contact your local utility again. Remember, as I said, talk to them early, but once you reach certain milestones in your project, you will want to negotiate the utility interconnection agreement. I'll show you what that paperwork looks like. I have images of that. You'll obtain your permit. Then you'll order, or the contractor will order the modules, rack and balance the systems. The system will then get installed. Your system will be commissioned. It has to be commissioned, and the utility company does the commissioning for you. And essentially what that means is commissioning is to verify that the owner is getting what they paid for and that the system is working properly. Why would we avoid that step? Very important step. And then you sign the interconnection agreement, and then you can sit back in your recliner and order some more videos on Netflix because you have more money in your pocket now that you're saving all that electricity. Okay, we're going to talk quickly about utility and state and federal incentives. Utility-wise, it really depends on who your utility is. Right now, I can tell you there's a window that's closing at the end, sunset, at the end of this year. So if you're thinking about doing this at your home, or your congregation is considering you doing it, and your electric provider is Alliant Energy, get moving. Get moving fast. As long as you are listed on their website, or you've at least notified them, they'll put you on the list. You're grandfathered in, essentially, but at the end of this year, their incentives rebate program goes away, and we'll talk about that in a minute. I don't know of any other utility companies that are in Iowa that are offering any renewable energy rebates. Does anybody know of anybody else? Yeah, Alliant's the only one. State incentives, tax incentives is essentially best place for you to go is Desire, D-S-I-R-E, Desire Solar, and look at it. It's a whole database of state tax incentives for renewable energy and energy efficiency. All state-specific financial incentives for property owners will be listed, and also the rules and regulations. And then for federal, again, Desire Solar is a great place to start. The federal renewable energy tax credit is in place right now, and it's 30% of your project cost, no matter what the project cost is. You claim that at the end of the year.
Could you repeat that side again, please?
30%.
Oh, the side.
DSIRE.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
So
Solar.
the federal incentive?
Yep.
Hear what that-
Yep. The best place to start is Desire Solar. It's where you get a database. You can reach the database of federal incentives for policies for solar. You just click on your state, which in this case is Iowa. Then there are also federal loan programs. It's amazing how much is out there and people qualify for that they don't even know that it's there. There's the Rural Energy America Program, which is loan guarantees. There's clean renewable energy bonds, energy efficient mortgages. Yes, there is a green mortgage. You can get up to $8,000 above premium above whatever your mortgage value is to do energy efficient upgrades or include them in the build out of your new home. I'm not sure what the rate is though. There's qualified energy conservation bonds and U.S. Department of Energy loan guarantee programs. So there's a lot out there. I could talk for 3 hours about just that. From an insurance standpoint, oh my goodness, I'm going to make this available, okay? But essentially what you need to know is, in terms of property damage, am I covered? Something happens, whether it's weather related or somebody damages my ground mount system, am I covered? Talk to your insurance agent. And essentially they're going to look at the value of the system, the investment that you're making, and look at what you're already covered for. Chances are pretty good you're going to be covered. Now, in the event of liability coverage, this is where the utility companies get nervous about renewable energy systems on site. And so kind of what the rule of thumb is that your liability insurance needs to be in the amount of $100,000 is usually sufficient. Add an additional $10 per year out of pocket, but $1 million, may add $35 to $40 more to your annual premium. Utility will likely dictate the level of liability insurance. Essentially, let's say a line is your utility. They may just go ahead and tell you what your liability, what you have to do, and then you talk to your insurance agent and you up your premium. Tips for talking to insurance companies and representatives. Meet in person. You are educating them because at this point, you've done all this other due diligence, and now you're going to be educating them what you want to do. And they may not have ever had a customer ever come to them with this interest in making this investment. So you may be educating them. The takeaway here is that if they're like, oh, we're not going to cover you, go find somebody else and just keep going. Stay aggressive until you find the right, or talk to somebody who has a PV installed and find out who their insurance company is and what their costs were. We already talked about utility relations. Talk to them if you're even thinking about doing it. They want to know, they need to know, and they're required. It's Iowa law, so you have to contact them. You should be prepared to provide a site plan. This is our property. This is our facility. We're going to do something around here, and it's going to be this large, and your installer will help you with that single line, is what it's called, a single line design, when you're just in schematics. Okay, what we've all been waiting for. Susan, is it okay? Can I? Sorry. Okay. Notice that I have down here, this is a disclaimer, the estimate numbers are used to facilitate understanding that project costs will depend on many market factors. Okay? Those market factors include how experienced your installer is, how financially backed your installer is, how many people that installer has on hand in terms of labor, how much overhead that installer has, and then how much the equipment costs if you're buying in bulk or if you're just getting in eaches or pieces. So it'll all just depend on how far away you are from where the equipment can be delivered, lot of things there dictate, but I can tell you that for roof-mounted systems in Iowa, the cost is coming down. It has come down even in the last year, and this $3 per watt installed is really not that far off. And it can vary from $3.28 to $3.50. If you're doing a large installation, it could be even $2.82 per watt installed. So again, it's just going to vary. But $3 per watt installed for, let's just say, a 3 kilowatt system. That's a nice little residential size system. We have a 1 kilowatt right outside of the solar traveler. So imagine when you go to see that, okay, that's going to be 3 times these 4 solar panels. So $3 per watt installed, that's $9,000 out of pocket for material and installation. You're producing 4,000 AC kilowatt hours of electricity. If you're an Alliant Energy customer, you're going to get $1 per 25 rebate per kilowatt hour, which is equivalent to $5,062. I am not kidding. I'm not kidding. So you have a $9,000 investment, and your utility company's going to give you $5,000 back. Now you're financing 4, okay? Then, because the federal ITC is 30% of your gross cost, you get to claim this $1,100, almost $1,200 on your end of year taxes. And then the state has a 50% of the federal tax incentive in place right now. And so you get to claim another just under $600 under state taxes. So now your net cost is $2,000. You're producing, as I said, 4,000 AC kilowatt hours production. That's $400 a year you're saving. This thing pays for itself in 5 years. And it's an annuity. Because these systems are warranted at 25 to 30 years. I go to work every day, we get our paychecks every 2 weeks. We put aside $50 a paycheck, $75 a paycheck, maybe your employee matches it, maybe they don't, but you never see that money. And we just believe that 20 years from now, we'll get that money, it's gonna be there, because we're saving it for another time. This type of annuity, you're receiving the benefits every single day. Every single day. Okay, so this would be a system that your utility rebate is for you to Alliant Energy, where you've gone down their efficiency path. They have 2 paths, one standard and one is efficiency. The efficiency, you get a larger rebate because you signed an agreement that you will change out your light bulbs and blow some insulation in. These are things that they want you to make your home more energy efficient before you install the solar system. So for doing that, they give you a greater utility rebate. I'm speaking in reverse. The other version, you did all that. This version, you said, nope, I want my solar panels installed. So they're only giving you 75 cents per kilowatt hour, but still, it turns out to be a $3,000 rebate. So you can see it has an effect on your return on your investment. You're 8 years out, but still 25 years, these systems are warranted. Now let me give you, that's a 5 kilowatt system. I tried to give several investment costs here, but 5 kilowatt system, again, $15,000 materials cost installation. This is what you're producing, 6,700 kilowatt hours production. Efficiency, you're going to get a $1.25 rebate per kilowatt hours. That's an $8,500 rebate. Federal, you're claiming just under $2,000. The state, you're claiming just under $1,000. So now your net cost is $3,600. You're saving $700 a year in electricity. That's a 5.4-year simple payback. Now, I have a couple of samples here where, let's say, non-Alliant customer. How many people in the room are non-Alliant customers? Okay. Well, regardless, Alliant system program is going to go away. So if you don't, this will apply to you, even if you are an Alliant customer after December 31st. $3 per watt installed, $9,000 system. Your federal tax incentive at 30%, you get to claim $2,700. Your state tax incentive, you get to claim $1,350. you get to claim some of the taxes too at 405, or you have to pay some taxes too at 405, but your total money down is $5,000, you're financing $4,000, your savings is $335 a year, your kilowatt hours per year production, your total offset is 432, quick return on your investment is 9.5 years. Now what did I say with the Alliant Energy rebate? It was 5 years. So it adds about 4 years across the board, whether when I run the same scenario for a 5 kilowatt system or a 30 kilowatt system. Without the Alliant kicker, without the utility rebate kicker back, it adds about 4 or 5 years to your investment. Now, from the commercial side, I want to point out a couple of things. Oops. On the commercial side, sorry. Sorry, I gotta get my bearings here. If you're making a commercial investment, there are additional incentives that are out there. One of them is called MAKERS. It's an accelerated depreciation. So when you're in business, that's a big incentive, obviously, to make a capital investment. Is that how much can I claim on my tax return for the depreciation value? And the other part of it is that not that the smaller systems aren't eligible for the Iowa Energy Center grant program that's called the revolving loan program, but there's what I've been told anyway is that the larger systems are more often being financed at their 0%, half of your project cost at their 0% rate. So let me just go through this really quickly. Using the example of $3 per watt installed, a 30 kilowatt system. That's a $90,000 materials and installation cost. You're producing about 40,000 kilowatt hour production. I'm not sure, what a typical church facility demand is, but for, say, a mid-sized commercial building, that's a significant offset. It's somewhere in the range of, 40% or 50% of their overall electrical demand. With Alliant, they've got a dollar per kilowatt hour rebate program. That's their efficiency program. And what this works out to be is a $25,000 utility rebate. So right off the top of that $90,000 cost, you factor in, I'm getting $25,000 from Alliant Energy. So that makes your net cost $65,000. Now, remember the little federal ITC 30% we were talking about, and the state credit at 50% of that federal. You get you can claim $27,000 on your taxes at the end of the year. And for the state taxes, you claim $13,500. So now your net cost is $24,500. So then you get a hold of the Iowa Energy Center and you say, we've got a system we would like you to review for a technical review, and then let us know if we fill out their paperwork. Do we qualify? Does this system qualify to be financed with your revolving loan program at 0% interest? And essentially, that program is this. They'll, upon review, technical review of your system design, they will finance your project up to 50% at 0% interest. That is free money for 50% of your project cost, okay? Over the lifetime of that loan, between 15 and 20 years is preferable. You can originate the loan at your local bank who you have built a rapport with. You don't have to finance at some strange bank in Wall Street. It's your local bank, it's all originated there, and you make 2 payments, and your bank just redistributes the money back to the revolving loan program. That's what it's all about. They give you money, and then you give it back. And typically, the loan arrangement is whatever your energy savings are, is right around the range of what that payment is. So 6.1 year simple payback, and they're financing you for the next 15 years, it's a pretty sweet deal. It's a great deal. And I don't think people really understand how this can work to their benefit. Now, let's just say you had 30 grand you wanted to put down on it, then you're only financing 60. So, and all of these other tax incentives are still playing off the same original cost, same $90,000 even though you put 30 down. So, like I said, it's all in the numbers, but you should know that the costs are coming down. You need to know if your utilities have rebates available. You need to know that you have state and federal tax incentives available to you. And there are these other programs like the Iowa Energy Center that wants to help you get these systems involved. Now, I know what you're saying. We're tax exempt. We can't claim these tax incentives. I talked on Blue in the Face to elementary schools, high schools. Right now, I'm working with the National Army, the Iowa Army National Guard. We can't claim any of these tax credits. So all we do is you run these numbers, this first cost of investment and then the energy savings, and it's going to take 54 years to pay for itself. And the federal government requires it has to pay for itself in 9 years or less. And then you're like, well, wait a minute, you're mandating that we have to meet renewable energy goals by 2020, but we can't claim any of the tax incentives that are there that make these systems pay for themselves. So what I have to say to that is talk to Jim. There's no reason why tax-exempt organizations can't start a for-profit entity. Talk to your business advisors, or if you have business advisors on your church board, talk to them. Think about how this might work to your advantage. It's been done before. The other things that are working their way to all of our benefit here in Iowa is the fact that third-party installation and financing is, I think it's just around the corner for us. And what that means is that installers will make the first cost investment for you. They will install the solar PV on your roof or do the ground mount system for you, and you lease that from them. You do a solar lease. Then the term that's called power purchase agreement is pretty much the same thing, but it's just a different wording and negotiation and different paperwork. That I believe is right around the corner too. There's some things in litigation right now that I think we'll see in the next couple of years that just make it across the board so tax-exempt organizations can just lease solar electric systems, or they can agree to terms and to purchase solar-powered electricity. Okay, lastly, I just want you to glimpse at what an interconnection agreement looks like. This is Align Energy's one. It's, you have to fill out who you are, where the site is, who your equipment contractor is, who the electrical contractor is, and what your intent is with the system size, how much you want to produce. And then you have to produce a site plan, as I mentioned, as well as single line design. So a lot of the paperwork that, let's say, your utility company is going to require is the same paperwork that your bank is going to require, your insurance company is going to require. So make multiple copies. And then lastly, this is what the application form for an interconnection agreement looks like. Standard level. Wait. Okay, here's the solar energy tax credit application form. Essentially, you just let the state know once your system is installed, please reserve the tax credits for me. This is the form that you can download from their website, from the Department of Revenue. It's just one page. I just reserve these tax credits for me because this is how much I spent on solar. And then your technical application instructions for the Iowa Energy Center revolving loan program. They have some pretty specific instructions, but it's all the same paperwork that Align Energy requires. And lastly, just to inspire everybody, the solar community project that really inspires me, and I'm trying to build a model around it in southeast Iowa, is with the Farmers Electric Cooperative. Who's heard of the Kelowna Community Solar Project? Yeah. Fantastic. Warren McKenna is just awesome. and very inspiring individual in of himself. And what he and his staff have done there is that they've said, you know what, we're going to remove this first cost for our members, and we're going to install a solar garden on the back of our facilities, and then we'll let our members decide how many of those panels they want to pay for. Not the wrapping, not all the interconnecting, and not all the trenching, and all that stuff, just the panel. And then whatever that panel produces is what they get as an offset on their utility bill. So all of that first cost has been removed. They just have to pay for the panel, which is about $250 per panel. And they're golden. So more of our utility companies need to do this for their members. And I'm not going to spend time talking about that, although I'd love to, but you'll get a copy of this presentation to know about solar thermal, which is another completely viable technology to heat, using the sun's energy to heat water for your home domestic water uses. And also radiant heat floors. I got through a lot of material. Thank you for being patient.